Good evening and welcome to the, what is the date? June 24th meeting of the Arts, Culture, and Historic Preservation Commission. I would like to ask Commissioner Garcia to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We'll proceed with roll call. Vice Chair Julia McMichael. Present. Commissioner Melinda Garcia.
Present.
Commissioner Denise Domke.
Present.
Commissioner Alfonso Voices.
Present.
And I am present. Do I announce who's missing or no? Just make sure you're right. Oh, thank you. Should I start over? Okay. Thank you. At this time, we'll move on to item 1A, presentations by the public on matters not on the agenda within the jurisdiction of the Commission. The Commission is prohibited by law from discussing issues not on the agenda brought to them at this time. And there are no members of the public, so we can move on from that. 1B, Commissioner Communications. Julia?
I recently attended the art show and was surprised to find that there were beautiful watercolors and low price points for the watercolors on display. And that gallery is just a local treasure. And also the Historical Society has a wonderful exhibit in the little nook inside the community center. And I was pleased to see that the Pride Month was honored with historical references to the long history in West Sacramento of places of refuge for people of diversity. So kudos to the Historical Society. It's a wonderful exhibition, and I hope everybody will run by the community center and see it.
Thank you. Anyone else?
To add to that, thank you, Julia, for checking out our exhibit at the gallery, and it's an ongoing exhibit through next June. We're going to have it for a whole year, and we'll have an event in October during LGBT History Month as well. Yeah. Thank you, but I have nothing to add.
Thank you. Commissioners? Anyone? Nothing more?
One further. One further. Tracy made reference to an inventory of art, or at least a loosely compiled inventory, and it would be great to be able to review that at an upcoming meeting, if not formally, but just to have it as a reference for myself. I'd really appreciate that.
Thank you. We'll move to item number 2, consent agenda. Consideration of approval of the minutes for the May 13th, 2019 special meeting. Any discussion, or can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
I motion to approve.
And a second.
I second.
Thank you. So moved by Commissioner Voices, seconded by Commissioner Garcia. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, we'll accept those minutes. Thank you. Moving on to item number 3, regular agenda, consideration of approval from the Administrative Draft Washington District Public Art Implementation Plan. Katie Yancey, hi.
Hello.
This is so exciting. Thank you.
I first want to just say thank you so much for coming, with this being the only item on the agenda. I really appreciate you all being here so we could have a quorum to discuss this final draft of the document, final administrative draft of the document. I have a brief presentation just to walk you guys through the attachments that you were provided in your staff report. So for the audience at home, we're having just a minor technical difficulty. So we'll just, if you bear with us for a second.
We have it. Uh-huh.
Okay, well, I have the PowerPoint with me, and if the audience at home would bear with me, I can reference like images that are in attachments that are attachments to the staff report. Oh, no, I have it with me. I'm just going to reference it. So I'll be having a little introduction to each slide as we're going through it, so I apologize for that. So the first slide that you have in front of you is just our cover slide that shows the Washington Monument. That's one of the first art pieces that was installed in Washington. It was installed by the Redevelopment Agency about 15 years ago, and it's included in our art plan for relocation. As the commissioners are aware, we received a grant in 2015 from the National Endowment of the Arts, and it had 3 deliverables. This plan that's in front of you for consideration this evening is one of those deliverables. The other deliverable was a similar plan prepared by the city of Sacramento that was incorporated into their downtown specific plan. And then the third component is the I Want to Communicate with You temporary art piece, which Tracy will reference, give you a quick update on during her director's update. And there's a current website related to that, which I don't have off the top of my head, but I'm sure Tracy will provide that when she gives her director's update. So we commenced our component of it related to this plan back in spring of 2018, and in August of 2018, we had our pop-up community event at the corner of 5th and C, where we did a temporary mural, and we also had several posters out for the public to respond to give us their feedback on what they thought this art plan should address and how it should be used to beautify and inspire and bring together Washington and to honor its history. So that is kind of the presentation that I'll be bringing forward to you tonight, is just sort of a brief overview. So the next slide that you have in front of you, I can't forward, so they'll have to, how will they move forward for me, Katie? So the next slide you have for you is the proposed artwork map. So there's 16 locations throughout the Washington district that will be looking to install art. For those of you at home, if you look at the cover sheet for attachment 1, this is the picture that we're looking at. So in February and in May, we brought draft content forward to this commission dealing with the draft art concepts and the priority sites, the policy basis for this plan, and then the recommended implementation strategy for this document, which is all contained in attachment 1. The next slide is just a reminder of a slide that you had previously seen. The goal of this plan is to create a nationally recognized collection. And the way that we want to do that is, one, by providing a technical sort of committee of experts to this commission to sort of act as that curatorial lens, and to also we also made recommendations about bringing on a full-time staff person or a part-time staff person, depending upon the geography that we're looking at for this art plan. And we also brought forward at the last meeting some sort of funding approaches that were just generally discussed, and some general recommendations that we'll be making to the City Council at a later date, and asking them to give us some direction about how we might go about funding this collection. The next slide shows you the E Street sculpture, and we'll just quickly move into that, the next slide there. This is a diagram that's provided in attachment 2. This is the sort of the technical diagram. Oh, thank you so much. You got it up and running. The technical diagram that we had prepared, and you saw a draft of it in the last presentation. Now we've provided it to you as attachment 2. We just received these a week ago today, so we haven't had an opportunity to incorporate them into the plan, which is part of the reason why you're seeing an administrative draft for approval, is we have a little bit of tweaking that we need to do, plus some additional pictures that we need to add in the community outreach component that we did not have properly sourced. So this diagram demonstrates how the art piece is going to tie to a variety of projects that we have going on at this corner of E Street and the Riverwalk. And so as you can see, the art piece is meant to be a suspended art piece, and it's that purple circle that's down at the bottom, and it's really attached to an expansion of the Riverwalk Park. Now, the expansion of this Riverwalk Park is talked about in the Washington Realized document that was approved a few years ago and that we're using as the basis for the Washington specific plan update that's going on right now. And the idea is to enhance that Riverwalk adjacent to that bathroom, to renovate that bathroom, and to also continue that Riverwalk path both underneath the I Street Bridge and then to the upper deck of the I Street Bridge as part of the I Street deck conversion. So you can see this art piece is a really important wayfinding piece, not only connecting to the pond that's on E Street, but also connecting to the restroom, this park, and wayfinding people to these important connections through up to northern Washington or across the historic I Street Bridge. And these are some pictures that are meant to invoke the spirit of what it is that we're trying to accomplish with these improvements. So they tie to some of the items that are mentioned in that diagram. And then we're very happy to say that we have rendering. So that, pictures worth 1,000 words. This is meant to communicate sort of what the scale is of that piece and how people will see that expansion of that Riverwalk and give them these areas where they can play and interact with the trail. So all of these will be incorporated into the document. We just didn't get there because we're moving at lightning speed, it feels like a bit here, in order to meet our grant deadline for the NEA, which is in October. And here's the water tank retrofit. Now this is the existing water tank that's going to be relocated with the I Street Bridge replacement project. The new ramp goes right through the location of this existing facility. So we spent a lot of time with our consultants talking about where we thought this could best be relocated. Now we haven't gone through the process of having someone go through the process of looking at can it actually be relocated, so we haven't solicited for like a structural engineer. That'll be one of the things that we'll need to do as part of the replacement project and the trail project that's going to be occurring in this location. And what we're recommending is that it be incorporated into these ramps that are envisioned with the I Street Bridge replacement project. So there are these sweeping ramps that are envisioned on the north side that are meant to sort of give people the experience of kind of walking through the treetop canopy that's there. And we thought that would be a perfect place for this water tank to go. I believe also one of the commissioners at our last meeting said that they thought this historic water tank and the historic bridge could be tied together. And so we thought that was a great place to relocate this facility and bring it closer to that historic bridge. And so you can see it's wrapped, so people would be able to get the experience of seeing it from the pedestrian scale and then moving up around whatever we end up doing with this historic water tank. And that's what this diagram is meant to reflect. It also shows what we envision will be happening with 2nd Street, so it's kind of a future conditions to kind of inspire people on like what it would look like. And then these are some images that are meant to set the tone about the spaces that will be around this water tank. And here's a rendering. So you can see it's a very high scale. It's meant to be seen from the other side of the river, and it's really meant to be incorporated into those trail facilities that are going to be occurring at that site. This is our 3rd priority site. This is located at the Grand Gateway entrance, so it's at the end of our Civic Center where our Civic Center meets Washington, so it's the end of West Capitol Avenue, the east end of West Capitol Avenue. And I wanted to mention that part of the council's strategic agenda is doing a RFP for this site, so for Grand Gateway. So we envision not only using this diagram to communicate what the intention is of the art piece and the plaza, but also to communicate the public purpose of this space with future developers that are coming in. So sort of multi-purpose. You can see here the plaza is keeping that existing cycle track that was just constructed with the Washington and Grand Gateway infrastructure project. We just had a groundbreaking for, I can't think of what it is, ribbon cutting for it this year. And what we wanted to do with the plaza is respect that there's the existing driveway curb cuts and bound this plaza by it, have it kind of be a little bit of an urban oasis, and have this art piece really be large, that you can see it all the way down West Capitol. It's sort of like greeting you, like welcome to, the Washington district, and it's acting as a terminus for our Civic Center, so it's communicating all of that. And it will be able to be programmed with food trucks. It'll have a sort of seating that surrounds it, a splash park, and then a very large art piece in the middle. And so this gives you an idea of what you can expect to see out in this space. Unlike the other previous art pieces, which aren't really meant to be touched, this one is meant to be tactile, and so people are meant to experience it with their hands, not just with their eyes. And this is a rendering of what we think that might look like. So incorporating that circulation component, again, with that wayfinding for the art piece, and then, again, a tactile experience with like a splash park. And then you see those sort of hill barrier areas. Those are meant to sort of make the people feel safe since they're sitting next to West Capitol Avenue. And then our last priority site is on the Riverwalk. Again, we're revisiting the southern part of the Riverwalk. And this will also serve as a talking point for the developer that's in the process of developing what we call the River One site. So we've met with this developer and showed them this diagram and said we think that there is an opportunity for us to, through the development of your site, work on what the art piece should be here and how the public realm that surrounds your building can eventually come into fruition. So we're using this diagram to begin to have those kinds of conversations with the developer to communicate what we want the public intent to be there. And as you can see, the art piece, which is located here, is put at the end of that access corridor, and it's meant to call people from 3rd Street all the way to the Riverwalk. It's meant to be large, very visible, very engaging, and again, very tactile. People will be able to touch this sculpture. So that's part of the intent of this diagram as well. And you can see here some examples of that distinctive paving that we're looking for, the water features, the seating that we're looking to have there. And again, you can see it's big, it's bright, it's colorful based on the example that we have. And here's a rendering that shows how it would interact with that building that's proposed to be there. You can see it's creating this nook of public space, this linear pathway, and then the beacon sculpture is calling people to the Riverwalk. This will be just south of where that temporary art construction with the dock that I want to communicate to you will be, so these will not be in conflict with one another. So that kind of concludes my presentation because that's the stuff you hadn't seen before with the previous workshops. And we're asking tonight for you to approve the administrative draft so we can begin our workshopping process with the council and hopefully get our council to approve this document in September so we can meet our grant deliverable deadlines that are in October. I'm happy to answer any of your questions. Thank you so much again for being here this evening so we can stay on schedule. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners have questions? None? None?
Oh, I do. I'm just being polite.
Okay, go ahead, Commissioner Dawn.
I have my apologies for not being able to attend the special meeting. So if a couple of these questions are redundant, thank you for humoring me.
Of course.
I appreciate it. The water tower, we mentioned several times as a historic structure. Is that historic as in, wow, it's really old and we love our water tower? Or is it historic as in state or federally designated?
It's the former, not the latter.
It's really old.
Wow, it's really old, and it is. We have pictures from long ago. It was functional.
Yes. Yeah. It'd be great to get rid of those cranes. I just can't tell you. Every time we get an our public art submission, it's always full of cranes. It makes no sense. So, in this document in its entirety, it includes language around restructuring the public art fund, around how public art is selected, around the role of the Arts Commission. Much of it, pretty big changes as it relates to this commission and how art gets selected. So is this section going to council as well? Because as you get into the document, deep into the document, the second consultant, I assume, created this?
That's correct.
And they got pretty specific, around how things should happen and what should happen, the role of a commission. And so is that the intention, that goes to council as well? So if they approve this document, are they also approving in essence, restructuring of the role of the Arts Commission?
Well, I think it's probably...
Or at least the public art policy?
Yeah, so if I could answer your questions in two parts, please, since you didn't have the opportunity to hear the presentation that the previous consultant made. What he had, so the answer to your question is yes, it would be going forward for the council to approve that. If I may add on, one, the committee is supposed to be just an advisory to this. So the decisions or the recommendations that would be going to the city council would still be coming through this commission. This committee is supposed to be like a technical advisory committee. However, you're correct that the way that the consultant wrote it is that they're supposed to be acting as sort of the proactive, curatorial sort of body of the city. And so they are.
And so that's the second part of my question.
Sure.
Is they are a committee, they are not a volunteer committee.
No, they would be
It is
paid.
suggested that they're paid.
That's correct.
Per person for attendance. And so my question was, is there is the funding for your new committee coming out of the NEA grant?
No, it would be coming out of the existing, either the existing funds that are set aside for public funds, like the 1% that goes into a fund.
But that 1% was set aside for art.
Yes, and this would be this would be covering the administrative tasks associated with curating an art collection.
And are these folks, is it a weighted selection process? And are the folks that are going to be paid out of the public art fund, which is very limited, to sit on this committee, are they intended to be West Sacramento residents?
No, we're not intending to have them be just West Sacramento residents. They're supposed to be regional leaders in the art community.
And so regional leaders in the art committee, in our community, not necessarily West Sacramento residents, paid out of the limited public art fund, yes?
That's correct.
Okay.
Can I add one thing to that? Because I also know that for this particular plan, there's a unique funding approach that would generate potentially additional funding for the Washington district.
That's correct.
As well.
Yeah,
Can you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. So there are other funding recommendations that are going to the City Council, which would be tied to funding what the commissioner is referencing. So currently, right now, we only set aside 1% public funds.
Right, I'm familiar with it.
Yeah, so for certain projects. This report is also recommending that we set aside 1% for even transportation projects that occur in the district, and so
So we could pay them unlimited amount of money?
no, I think the intent is to recognize that they have expertise, that their time is valuable by committing to helping us build a collection in Washington. And instead of taking an ad hoc approach to selecting piece by piece by piece,
Yes.
that there would be a committee that would be receiving a nominal per diem to participate in going out and seeing are there artists that understand what West Sacramento is trying to achieve. They would be receiving direction from this commission about what those tones and contexts that they're trying to create, but they would be taking that expertise and their connections and going out and seeing if they can get artists interested in West Sacramento, interested in participating in this collection, or if, for example, like the subtile piece that went in the Bridge District, we were able to get a lot of publicity related to that. We had articles written about it. So I think the idea is that this committee will act as that kind of ambassador for the West Sacramento's Washington collection.
And so this is, so the committee is specific for the Washington collection?
That is correct.
It is not
Citywide, no.
citywide. It's specific. Okay, that's a key piece of information. And it's appointed by the mayor.
That's correct.
Recommended or screened. What's the selection process?
Well, we need to bring on a consultant to actually help us get through developing the answers to all these questions that you have. I think the big question that we have right now is that we're not sure that the council, and we said this at the last meeting, we're not sure that the council actually is going to be on board with taking this curatorial approach. They may think, but it's better to, just like Washington is, which is very eclectic and has evolved over time, they may say, no, that's not we want it to stay eclectic. We want it to stay pieced together and ad hoc, because that's genuine to Washington. We don't know how they're going to respond. So that's part of the reason why we're very careful with this language as well, that it's an administrative draft, because it may be very possible the council will say something that's so significant in terms of these policy that we have to come back, which is also the reason why we're here in June asking you to approve this document, so I have enough time to ask the council these questions, because some of them are very are very different from the way that we've been doing things. And we're asking you all to sort of give us enough blessing to have that conversation, because I think at the end of the day, what we're all trying to achieve is a high-quality, nationally recognized collection in Washington. And our arts consultant said that he thought this was the best path for us to do that, because the other thing that he also pointed out is, I'm an economic development expert. That's what I do. And I'm up here talking to you about art. There is nobody in the Parks Department that also has art expertise. So in a way, we're looking at bringing board consultants that may actually have a vested interest in West Sacramento versus, frankly, a consultant that comes on board for 4 months to produce a plan. This committee effectively will become like staff or an advisory body to this commission, because we just don't have the in-house expertise to curate a 16-piece collection over the course of 10 years.
Mm-hmm. And you see that role specific to the Washington District and the Washington Plan, because the other language in here talked about some other methods that things could be funded. Many of them we already do in special districts. It makes sense. They talk, but it read to me as a suggestion. So in those, talking about impact fees, talking about in lieu fees from developers, and so my question was, so in the River One development and then in the Grand Gateway, the developer there, is it proposed that those two big, substantial public art pieces be supported by the developers that are involved, or by the city to attract the developers?
I think it's too early to answer that question with any certainty. I think every conversation that we'll have, either with the developer of the River One site or the Grand Gateway Master Plan, will be first, do you understand the value that this art brings, and that it has a wayfinding component, that it's designed to move people around your development so they understand where they're supposed to be going. So, you can understand there's a public space and there's a private space. And so I think that's the first question. I think once we get to a developer saying, I understand that, then it becomes a question of, okay, how much do you have a vision for your aesthetic? And then so on and so on and so on. So in simplest terms, I expect that for both those sites, it will be a negotiation. Mm-hmm. And we will have to look at, from the expertise that we have, which is frankly contained only in this document right now, because we don't have a staff person that does art and we don't have this committee established. We will have to do our best to negotiate with these developers on what piece will go there. And I think part of the other reason why we are looking for approval today is if we want to get in front of the city council as soon as possible, because if they say, yeah, we like this committee, I, for one, as one of the people who's been negotiating with River One, would really like someone else besides me making these decisions about whether the art piece works with the collection or not. I would love to have an expert or a series of experts to bounce ideas off of, to understand, are we really achieving what we're supposed to be achieving? And right now, we are flying blind.
Understand. And really, this NEA grant, July of 2015, it's been a long process.
Yes.
And there's been a lot of really good work put into this. As it relates to the Public Art Fund, because $125,000 is not going to move this too far down the road, right?
Well, the $125,000 was to pay for those 3 deliverables I mentioned earlier.
Right, okay.
So we have a very small piece of that we're paying for this work with,
okay.
this planning work.
But the art will be funded through other mechanisms.
The art beyond this temporary I want to communicate with you piece, yes, it will have to be funded through other mechanisms.
And if transportation projects are added to the public art policy, which would be the city's transportation project. So money when the city builds a bridge, when the city builds, right now it's
1% of that.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Right now it is, if the city builds a big building, there's 1% set aside. Yes? Mm-hmm. And so I'm wondering, the state grant that was awarded yesterday or today for the permanent housing on West Cap for the homeless. yes,
Mercy Housing Project, yes.
Project. Because that funding came in, and I'm probably in the weeds, but I'm just curious, is there a 1% set aside for public art from that project?
I'm not familiar enough with that project to answer your question.
Okay, all right, so I probably moved.
With our program, public-private projects do not pay into the art fee. In other jurisdictions, any project that has any public funding triggers that requirement to pay in the fee, but unless it's a city facility, a city building, really it's city public buildings and
Oh,
parks
right.
that are currently paying into the
Right.
fee.
Right, okay. Thank you, thanks for, it's valuable information. It gives us all talking points if we get pushback.
Of course.
From folks about pieces of this, and I know we're all on a tight schedule, and it must be frustrating to have to repeat some of it, so I appreciate your patience with me.
May you ask good questions?
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other questions from commissioners? Yes,
On the
ma'am.
vote, what constitutes a quorum today?
We do. Oh, you mean support?
What passes this?
What passes this? A majority?
Any other questions? So I have a couple of questions. This 1% from city construction. So for example, the new STIRS building, the city's not building it, so it's not 1% of that?
That's correct.
Okay. And let's see. Question about the proposed monument relocation. That
The Washington Monument?
Washington Monument.
Yeah.
I thought we discussed that that was not an original piece, that was created.
No, it is an original piece.
It is?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know where I got
The
that.
egg beater?
Yes, yes.
Yeah, it was.
We're going to move
Okay.
it into the middle of the restaurant district.
Yeah, it was commissioned by the redevelopment agency. It is an original piece, yeah. Whether it's can be
It's not,
relocated.
it's not an historic piece.
It is not a historic piece, but it is an original
But we're
piece.
still going to preserve it and pay to move it.
I want to say it was $250,000.
That's
Oh,
correct.
okay, okay.
Way back when.
That- Yeah,
Yeah.
that's substantial.
And we're not certain that it can be relocated. We don't know if it structurally can be relocated.
And I want to thank you for asking the questions, Commissioner Domke, about the paid consultants. I feel that our city is not going to staff a full-time person to oversee this, and I don't see how we can get from A to Z without consultants who know their stuff to do
No,
the job.
agreed.
And to have the vision and to understand where the artists are that can create these kinds of pieces and what structurally can be done and what it takes. I mean, that is a whole area of professionalism that I know I don't have. I don't know about you all. I appreciate being able to see it and bless it, but we have no expertise. So I don't feel like my position here is undermined by the proposal for consultants who know what they're doing.
I agree, just for purposes of discussion. Paid consultants and a paid selection committee feel like two different things to me. And on the I Street Bridge, for example, there's no one that is a resident in West Sacramento that sits on that. There were two representatives in that conversation, and they were businesses. The arts are a personal thing, yes?
Yes.
So and maybe there aren't folks. Maybe they'll send out an RFP. Are you sending out an RFP, or are you hand selecting them?
For the committee?
Uh-huh.
So I think if I remember correctly, because we're getting into the weeds, I apologize, but I think the committee is actually something that we would discuss.
The mayor selects.
The mayor selects, so we would discuss the structure. If I recall off the top of my head, the structure was meant to be like 2 local, 2 regional, and 2 statewide, or something like that. So there would be a wide variety of opinions and resources and opportunities to sort of act as that ambassador that I said earlier, so that we're hitting multiple geographies in terms of that expertise. Don't quote me on that, but that's my recollection is that that's how it's structured.
I can't find it in the document, so hold on while I flip through it frantically. When I read it, you know, the NEA grant happened quickly. We had to move quickly. There was a change in governance on the Sacramento side. There was, you know, we're a small town. We don't have a full-time art consultant, like Katie said.
Yeah.
And so basically, it was appointed on the other side of the river, and we had one seat, right? There wasn't a big West Sacramento. It was you, wasn't it?
It was me, and I was the volunteer representative of this board.
Yeah.
There were paid people who received a professional stipend.
Right.
There was sort of no hourly pay.
But they didn't represent West Sacramento.
No, they represented
And
art and artist communities.
Yeah, and it needed to
art
happen.
expertise.
It needed to happen quickly. We certainly didn't want to walk away from grant money.
No.
But if we have an opportunity to plan, then I wonder how, I don't know. Tracy, or Katie, are you thinking that there'll be some announcements that go out offering people the opportunity to engage? Or is it going to be hand-selected and then appointed? What do you,
I'm looking at the section right now so I can make sure that I'm speaking to it
page is
accurately.
it, Katie?
It's on page 22.
Thank you.
Here we go.
So I'm going to it's not as specific as I mentioned, although that was the intent when we discussed it with the consultant, and so certainly I can add, I mean, it's an administrative draft, so I could add that point if the direction that we received tonight is approval with that amendment, which would be to put like 2 local, 2 regional, and then the rest can be filled, or I could put half can be local, however the committee wishes, the commission wishes to direct. But I will say that it does say at the bottom of the 1, 2, 3, 4, that says local committee members should be encouraged. So it's clearly indicating through that statement that they're expected to be local committee members. It also says in paragraph 3, collectively, we should have a deep knowledge of the public art field locally, regionally, nationally, and internationally. So I think that even without stating how many members are local, the language in there about what qualifies them as being, to satisfy the requirements for this committee, as well as the fact that that those who are local are hoping that they're going to be donating their time. I think that indicates that the intent is that it won't be just people from San Francisco and San Diego deciding what the art collection is in West Sacramento.
The other thing I know that it would be advisory to this committee, but the other thing that I don't really see clear, okay, so it's an advisory body.
No independent authority is what it says.
I don't see it stated, although it does refer to the Washington District specific art plan.
To choose artists for Washington District, so specific just fees.
This doesn't really talk about how it would get paid, how these people, where the funding is coming from. And it also, it feels like $500 times 7 plus expenses plus local committee members could be encouraged to donate their honoraria as community service. I just have questions about the funding stream. Tracy, do you have any ideas?
Well, I was just reviewing this section, and this process has been used before. They cite a few examples. Down with the University of California, San Diego is probably the closest example of this process being used, and it might be.
They talk about St. Louis, Denver, and San Diego.
Yeah.
The general funds are not the same.
A much bigger city.
No, it might be worthwhile to find out from those efforts how they actually selected the individuals, the process that they used, because it is a little general in here about how we would actually develop the list of individuals for the mayor's consideration. They might have some experiences that might be valuable for us here, but it would either be funded through the additional fees that are collected through projects that are constructed, depending on what the anticipated revenue might be from adding the 1% onto projects that currently don't have to pay for that.
Those are city transportation projects, though, and this hasn't been passed yet, so.
Right.
All the big projects that I can think of are already in the mill, so they would fall out of this criteria.
Right.
I mean, Pioneer Bluffs, but that's a ways
Well,
down
I
the
mean,
road.
we don't actually have I don't mean to contradict you, but we don't actually have a construction funding agreement.
People do all the time.
But just to be clear, we don't have a construction funding agreement for the I Street Bridge Replacement Project, which is $230 million, give or
Right.
take. We don't have a construction funding agreement for the I Street debt conversion, which is about anywhere from $4 to $10 million. So I'm just, I think
it
it's.
could be
It could.
that could be part of it.
Yeah, I mean, we have.
We don't really have language in our current public art policy around that.
Well, that's what this is designed to do. So I think it's just worth mentioning that there are 2 projects on the horizon that do not have construction funding agreements that this policy would be applicable to.
So then we could put language in this agreement that it would be tied to construction. Say, use the jargon that you used.
The construction funding agreement.
Right, that it was tied to the beginning of that agreement rather than the beginning of the project. Because that would be great, because then we would know where we might have funding.
Well, I don't mean to split hairs, but projects aren't projects until you have them funded. So it's sort of implicit that you don't literally have CEQA on the I Street Bridge Replacement Project or
Right.
on the debt conversion.
Right.
So from staff's perspective, and I appreciate that you want to be explicit, but from staff's perspective, these aren't projects until CEQA is approved, NEPA is approved, and the construction funding agreements are in place.
What is CEQA?
CEQA, the California Environmental Quality Act. It's
Thank you.
yeah, no problem. It's environmental clearance, and NEPA is the federal version of that.
I guess I think of a project from its first grant. I feel like I have some exposure to the jargon and the situations around funding, but yeah, that's cool. If that's the assumption, and that assumption is made clear to council, then it looks like we'll have more money than we know what to do with in the Washington district.
Katie, have there been other sources of funding discussed at all, other than the additional 1% fee being tagged on to different project types? Like, there is general fund money.
There's general fund money, there's park impact fees, certainly, and these when they're a wayfinding component, when they really are designed to be part of the circulation system, that means they could potentially also be eligible for traffic impact fees, and that could be either.
Talked about in lieu developer fees in the document, that like if you, like in the Bridge District, which they recommended that this follow that historic path, as the Bridge District is, that, when we got the Dangos, then there was probably, I don't know this for a fact, but like if they donated art and the city accepted that art as public art and approved it, then there would be a reduction in their fees.
Yeah, yes. In the Bridge District, they've been pulled out of the impact fee system, but in Washington, it would be those reductions of the park or traffic impact fees, depending upon what the art was accomplishing.
Could it also be possible that you could consider a combination of funding sources, just like we've done for some of our other funding strategies?
Yeah, I mean, the best example that I can give right now, so we received a grant, and I don't have the particulars, so I'm gonna wing it here. We received a grant from SACOG, it's about $2 million to do the North River Walk Trail. There are participating and non-participating costs that are associated with that, and one of the activities that we wanted to do with the non-participating costs, I mean the costs that are local, that we have to pony up as part of the grant, is to do the water tank. So we are, I appreciate all the concerns that the commission has. I'm going to try to answer your questions as best as I can. We're already doing some of these things that are outlined in here, where we're looking at transportation projects and we're saying, with non-participating costs, can we relocate this water tank, make it a wayfinding element, and fund the art improvements? It's wayfinding, it's part of the circulation system, just like the trail is, and add it into the cost, and then have that counted towards either our local match or our in-kind contribution, et cetera, et cetera. So leveraging the monies that are coming in for grants, even if that's not specific tasks or, a part of the, SACOG money is just to fund the trail, we're attempting to, have our local match be double, triple counted as best as we can. And so, but those funding strategies, in a way, to put it simplistically, are innate into how we're doing almost all of our work. Most of the capital improvement projects that happen in West Sacramento are funded by multiple colors of money that are double dipped, triple, quadruple times. And so I would expect that all the art projects in Washington have that same kind of approach attached to them, as much as they can be incorporated into the circulation system, as much as we can negotiate with developers, as much as we can make them non-participating costs associated with our local match for grants. That's what we're going to be doing. And our consultant didn't write about any of that. I'm not sure he would have really appreciated all of that kind of thinking and layering that went into it. And two, we already do it.
Right.
And this document was about what are we not doing? What can we do better? What do we have to be doing in order to get to this nationally recognized collection? And doing what I just described, we're already doing, so it doesn't really need to be in the DNA of this document. It's sort of how West Sac gets things done.
Yes, I would agree. And this document then is anticipated a 10-year life?
Well,
Build out the art, is that the goal, 10 years?
I think it's,
I didn't see a time.
no, again, this is just.
I've heard.
Yeah. We looked at the different, pardon me, there is a table that has timeframes attached to it in very tiny little writing.
Oh, and so where I'm going with this is, you feel like with the current leadership and direction of staff, that this, probably intentionally a little vague to give you some room to be creative.
Yes.
Could stand, let's say, for some reason within, I'm going to pick 10 years, I don't know if that's the number, but within that time frame, if there was a change of elected leadership, you feel like this document is sound enough and the historical amazing ability to grow money out of a little tiny pot would sustain it?
So, yes.
Because it's the elected leadership question.
So there is a table, it's a very tiny table that is on.
Page is the very tiny
Page
table.
29 and 30, and please bear with me, you might not be able to read it, but it actually says that all the art pieces are to be completed by 2030. So it goes through each of the pieces and articulates when they're supposed to be in place. So I think that's why the committee says, 3 to 5 years. That would be, re-upping the committee anywhere from, about 3 times, right, depending upon how long the committee stand. You'd have members switching in and out over 3 times, potentially, over the life of the thing. And it's, in terms of the intent, I would also mention that this is going to get incorporated into the specific plan. So once it does that.
That's why I'm asking questions.
Of course. But to answer your question then, once it goes into the specific plan, and I don't mean to lecture anybody here about what a specific plan is, but it's a...
I like it.
Okay, good. It's a governing document. It becomes law. And so when we're putting these things in here and we're saying it's part of the circulation element, it's part of wayfinding, it's part of how we're moving people around the district, you'll notice that this art is not there for beautification. We don't use the word beautification. We talk about it's wayfinding, it's placemaking, it's part of the circulation, it's part of the DNA of the infrastructure, meaning it's no different than a water pipe. So when it goes into the specific plan, it becomes full force and effective law. So I think that's as powerful as you could possibly ever be with the statements of intent and these art concepts and where they're being placed and why they're there. You're making them as important as the sidewalks. You're making them as important as the pipes that go in the road. You're making them as important as the buildings that are going in, because it's in the specific plan and it becomes law when adopted.
That's powerful.
It is. Thank you for saying it out loud.
Of course.
For everyone who's watching and everyone who will watch.
Yes.
Thank you.
I am here to answer all of your questions.
Commissioners, do we have any other questions or discussion? Director Michael, I just want to clarify what are we accepting? Are we approving this to be moved on with our blessing to the city council?
Correct, so that the city council can consider the administrative draft.
Okay.
I move that this body move this forward in consideration of approval of the administrative draft Washington District Public Art Implementation Plan.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? One abstain? It passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Okay, moving on to item number 4A, Director's Report. Director Michael?
Yes, thank you, Chair Jordan, members of the commission. A few items to report on this week. So this week we're kicking off our community engagement effort for our Prop 68 statewide park development and community revitalization program. We have a lot of meetings. We emailed you prior to this meeting the electronic version of the flyer that we also distributed to you this evening. The program is geared towards new park development, park expansion, or park renovation projects. And just as a refresh, I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, to be eligible, projects must be located in areas that are that meet the income requirements. So currently they have to have a median income below $51,026, or they have to have a ratio of less than 3 acres of parkland per 1,000 residents within roughly a 1 mile radius of the park site. So that significantly limited the potential projects for us. Additionally, there's an incredibly short performance window for this round of grant funding because the grant program was launched so late. So applications are due in August. We won't find out if we're awarded until early 2020, and all projects must be completed by March of 2022. That means that projects that we apply for need to be projects that can be completed very quickly. So we have to have site control. Ideally, we have the environmental cleared, and we have to have the ability to construct relatively quickly to meet these guidelines. So after screening all of the potential projects that we had identified through our Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan, through the work through the Bridge District, Washington Realized, feedback from the community, we identified 4 initial sites that we thought would be great projects that fit the different categories. Bright Park was one of them, but it did not meet the eligibility requirements. After multiple discussions with state parks, we just couldn't get that site to be eligible. It does not meet the median income household requirements. So unfortunately, we cannot submit an application at this time for Bright. We'll see what happens with the next and future phases of this grant program and other grant programs. The other 3 sites, and it's a doozy to go for 3 at once, the Public Plaza in the Bridge District, and I think that is a site that is really interesting because it will have a significant art component, and art is an eligible use under this grant program. So the Public Plaza is, per the development agreement for the Bridge District, a site that needs to be acquired by the city. We are applying for grant funding for the acquisition of the public portion of the plaza, as well as to construct some recreation components, which can include public art and unique, can even be like hardscape gathering spaces that you create for programming opportunities. The second site is West Acre Park. That would be not only a renovation of a very dated park on property that's owned by the school district, but a potential expansion because the school district has offered up the property immediately adjacent to the park that currently has the parking lot and the empty warehouse buildings. So we would be looking at an expansion there and a renovation of the park. And then the third site is new park development, the potential 1504 Fallbrook Street. We're calling it the Fallbrook campus. It was the former and soon-to-be future home of Westmore Oaks Elementary. Looking at the unused playfields right now for that site and the opportunity to open it up as a neighborhood park, similar to what we did for Elkhorn Park. So we have a lot of meetings to get the maximum number of points in the evaluation process. You need to demonstrate 5 meetings per park site. We are combining a few of the meetings. So tomorrow, or Wednesday rather, we have 2 meetings, one in the morning, one in the evening at the Black Box Theater. It's a joint kickoff meeting for all 3 sites. And our wrap-up meeting will be a wrap-up meeting for all 3 sites. From there, we'll have breakout meetings and on-site meetings where we'll be asking people to participate in walking audits to provide feedback about the specific types of amenities they'd like to see on those park sites. So it's a big effort that has to be done in a very short period of time. Applications are due August 5th, and we hope to see you at one or more of the meetings, and please share information with your colleagues, friends, family. We really want to be able to demonstrate that we've been able to get a significant amount of input on these sites, in addition to everything we've already done for the Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan. The second item I wanted to share with you is that we have our Parks Bus Tour coming up this week on Thursday. I know not everybody can participate, but for those that can, we look forward to seeing you there. For those that cannot, we will actually have a write-up of the tour and all of the sites that we visit, so we will share that narrative with you, so you have that information. The third item, I wanted to let you know that last week, City Council approved the Memorial Park project, the upgrades to that site. We will be breaking ground in just a few weeks, and it's really exciting to be able to move forward with that. That project, because it has a very tight time frame, we've not factored in an art feature necessarily onto the site, but we have planned for that project to pay into the art fund. The estimated art fund fee is $16,000 for that project.
We're on our way. We're on our way.
Mm-hmm.
Now we're up to $50,000.
That's right.
I think our current balance is about $64,000. So when we add the $16,000, we'll be getting up there.
Yep.
And then I just very quickly wanted to highlight that July is Parks Make Life Better Month, and there are a lot of activities happening in our parks that we'll be highlighting. So look for some social media, city website posts about that. We've got concerts in the park. We have kids' night out in the park. We have yoga on Mill Street Pier. Just a lot of great things happening around the city at our different facilities. Healthy cooking classes at the rec center. And then lastly, as Katie mentioned, July 10th is the deadline to submit nominations for the River Crossing I Want to Communicate With You project. That is a subset of the NEA grant, the temporary art installation on both sides of the river. And just as a refresh, the public docks face each other across the Sacramento River. They will have the temporary art installations. There's a website that you can visit to submit your entries. It's www.rivercrossing.name, or you can also mail it in to River Crossing, attention Sacramento Metropolitan Arts Commission, 915 I Street, 3rd floor in Sacramento, California, 95814, or in person. We have a collection box here at City Hall on the 1st floor next to the public counter. And that concludes my update.
Thank you. May I ask a question?
Yes.
Because we want as many community members as possible at these, what kind of communications are being used to get this word out to our community to come to these events?
Well, I can say that I've seen it on social media, I've seen it on our website. I have actually heard it on the radio, on a few radio stations. I've heard it advertised, Capital Public Radio, KFBK, there might be others as well.
Do you have community center? They're coming out to our Camp Lakeside.
Let Connie.
They're actually coming out to talk to our community center seniors at our Fab Fourth event, and they are working with our some of our summer camp children to make them aware of participating and nominating someone for that.
Thank you. Let's see, item 4B, future item requests. I apologize, I think I put that up front just because I went in order. Commissioners, any future item requests? No. Item 4C, adjournment. Can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? Do I need a motion? Tom?
You do. I move that we adjourn.
Thank you. Second?
I second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting adjourned. Thank you. Thank you. So I should follow this in the order.
You did follow.